So I wanted to introduce you to my big project. I've always wanted a truck, and this winter I came across a 2003 Tundra access cab for a price I couldn't pass up. It was running and driving. There are some issues with it. I got it for $1,600 bucks. So let me give you a tour. So my plan, I don't know much about the mechanical history of this vehicle. The previous owner had it for about a year, didn't have really any records. Did know that the frame had been replaced in the recall. So I'm taking a bit of a chance on this. It's got 216,000 miles. I plan on doing a bunch of just sort of maintenance work to it, and I'll show you that stuff in a second. Some of the known issues right now are the power steering doesn't work. The reservoir is empty. However, I was about to fill it with some automatic transmission fluid when I crawled up under and realized that the rack and pinion is leaking. So I'll show you what I'm going to plan on doing for that. But the engine bay is very clean. I don't see any stickers indicating that the timing belt has been done, so that's going to be one of my first things. I live in New England, and so rust tends to be a huge problem. But for the most part, this vehicle is very minimal rust. The rocker panels tend to rust out pretty quickly here in New England. But this, as you can see, it's got the factory step. Very clean rocker panels and very clean bottom of the door sills. There's some dings here and there. Interior, it's an SR5. It's got the captain's chairs up front and the bench out back. Cloth interior, very good shape inside. So some of the things that I am going to have to do, I made a large order to Rock Auto. So first thing I'm going to do is replace the radiator with a Denso radiator. I used to have a 2001 Toyota Sequoia, which has the same 4.7 V8. And I knew nothing about it and just started driving it, didn't do anything to it. And within a couple of months, I was driving down the highway and looked down and noticed that my temperature gauge was spiking. And so I wanted to try to make it to the next exit, which was about a mile away. But before I got there, smoke started pouring out of the engine bay, and so I had to pull over. And when I lifted the hood, there was just pink foam or pink sludge everywhere. Some people call it the pink milkshake of death. So I don't know the history of this one, so for a couple hundred, like $130 or something like that, I thought it was worth it. So I'm going to replace that. So I also got the ASIN timing belt kit with the hydraulic tensioner. I'm going to do the timing belt. I got a PVC valve. I've heard that those can be a failure point, and it's pretty cheap. I think it was like, I don't know, $8 or $9. So I'm also going to do the power steering repair kit, so all the seals and bushings. I'm hoping that'll fix it. If not, I'll have to look into getting a reconditioned rack and pinion. I'm also going to do the accessory belt, also called the serpentine belt, because again, I don't know the age of it. I'll show you in a minute. The rear differential is leaking fluid. This is also a pretty common issue. Rust gets to them and they just get pinholes and they leak. And unfortunately, these are welded on caps. These aren't bolted on, so I'm going to have to find somebody to help me weld it on. I don't have a bunch of experience with that. I'm also going to do the valve cover gaskets. They're starting to leak a little bit of oil. And before I really figured out what was going on with the power steering, I thought it was the hydraulic tube. So I bought a large and a small hydraulic tube, but I'm starting to think that that's not it. So I'm thinking this repair kit will help. I had to buy some tools to help me with this project. So I got a 1.5 pound rubber mallet from Harbor Freight, a 12-inch adjustable wrench from Harbor Freight. I'm hoping I don't have to use this because I'm gonna try to get away with sockets and wrenches, but just in case, I wanted to have an adjustable. And I got this cheapy hex key set for one key only, really, the 3/8 inch, this big one here, because from the videos I've seen online, this is required as part of the timing belt replacement process. I also got this puller set for taking off the harmonic balancer, again as part of the timing belt change. I've heard that this kit works really well. It's like 15 bucks at Harbor Freight, with one exception, and that is the washers are really cheap and bend. So I've got a couple of higher strength washers just on my tool bench, so I'll grab those. I also got an oil pan, a multi-use transfer pump, probably to swap out the oil in the transfer case and the differential, but we'll see about that. It doesn't hurt to have this. So to do the transfer case, I got some 5W90, which, I'm sorry, 75W90, and I think the specification is for 70W90 or something like that, so I may not end up using this. Plus, I don't know if 1 quart's enough. I got some just sort of multi-purpose automatic transmission fluid so that I can test the power steering. If it leaks all out, it's not the good stuff. I got some high mileage full synthetic 5W30 for an oil change. This is just the Walmart brand. I think I've read some reviews online that said this is actually pretty good comparison to some of the more expensive brands. And then I got the Mobil 1 extended performance oil filter for this truck. As you can see, it is pretty wet. I haven't opened it yet, so I don't know if there's any fluid in it right now. But I'm not planning on driving it at all while I'm working on it. It's just going to sit in my garage while I work on it. They're the Bilstein shocks, so this is I believe that's part of the TRD package. Also, the previous owner was starting to do some work on the drum brakes. He claims he did one, and then there's a kit in the back seat for another. But I'm going to check out both of those because I really don't know the status. I also want to take a look at the front pads and rotors and calipers and all that. There is an exhaust issue. You can see that the pipe just rotted right out, and so now it's venting up into the bottom of the bed. This pipe is supposed to continue through this hanger and out the back, so I'm going to have to get some pipe work done. I don't know if I want to replace the whole muffler or cut it there and either weld it or clamp it or something, but I'll figure that out. So I have it up on these 6-ton jack stands. I know that there are some people out there that say that it's not good to work under a vehicle with just jack stands. I did put logs under the back wheels so it shouldn't slide. It's right on the frame. I'm hoping it's good. I'm leaving the tires on for now, so if something does fail, it should just stop on the tires. But I just needed more room to work, and I obviously don't have a lift. So the power steering. So you can see all the moisture leaking out from, so I thought it was, so when I ordered those hydraulic tubes, I actually ordered the wrong ones. What I got were this one and this one, which I don't think are leaking. This one is the one that comes from the engine, the power steering pump. And so that's not part of the kit, but I think part of the rebuild kit does have the O-ring, so it might just be leaking from this juncture here. So I might just be able to pop out that O-ring and get by. I don't want to have to buy the whole hydraulic tube that goes up to the pump because that's very expensive. So my plan is to take this out. As you can see, there's also moisture other places. So I'm hoping I can get away with just rebuilding the gaskets and the seals. I also noticed this today. I don't know what part of the suspension that is, but that's popped right off, so I'm going to have to work on that. The frame was replaced with a recall. I was able to run the VIN through Toyota's website, and they show all the dealership maintenance done, and the frame was recalled, or replaced in the recall. So one thing I don't quite understand is on this cross member here, there's a bunch of fluid right here, but I can't tell what it's coming from because I don't see any lines or anything that would be leaking. I mean, this is way further back than the engine. I know the transmission's right here, but I don't see any signs of leakage from it. I mean, it's sprayed some grease, it looks like, so I don't know. I mean, I have to figure that all out. But I think this will be a good project. So there's the catalytic converter. So I think this will be a fun project. I got it for 1,600 bucks. I spent about $500, $600 on parts and tools. So I'm only into it for about 2,200 bucks, and it should be a good learning experience. Figure out some stuff about mechanics. I've heard that these trucks are pretty easy to work on. They're not all full of electronics and computers and stuff like that. And there's a lot of space to work. So the engine bay is pretty wide open. I mean, you can see the valve covers. Let me see if I can get a good shot of that. I don't know if I can. This side isn't too bad, I don't think. The other side is definitely damper, so I'm gonna replace those valve cover seals. So, just want to give you a tour of the vehicle and tune in for some more work.